Paul Vassilef, you are the founder and head designer of Paolo Sebastian, an internationally renowned atelier based right here in Adelaide, South Australia. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Can you name some of the celebrities that you've created exquisite gowns for?
Well, we've worked with quite a few really amazing people. We dressed Juliana Rancic for the Oscars. We've worked with Kim Kardashian. Katy Perry wore one of our dresses from our Disney collection for American Idol, and she sang outside of the Walt Disney Castle in Disneyland. Kerry Washington, Heidi Klum. So we've got to work with a few really cool people. In Australia, we've dressed Carrie Bickmore, Ada Nicodemu, Michelle Bridges, a lot of really amazing people.
I'm aware of Joe Bonamassa seeing a music video when he was 6 of Eric Clapton playing guitar and knowing immediately that was what he wanted to do with his life. In my research, you have stood out as one of the youngest luminaries to encourage young people to follow their dreams. Your journey has been inspirational, exceptional, strong-minded and very powerful.
Thank you.
Paul, do you remember when you first became aware that you loved what you now do?
I mean, for me, I've always been involved in fashion. I was making dresses from age 3 out of wrapping paper and newspaper. So I knew it was always something that I wanted to do. I never really knew that it was a job. It was just something that was a hobby, and I did it in my spare time. I think it was when I was around age 12 was when I was kind of certain that that's what I wanted to do with my life, and started playing with the idea of starting my own label and what I would call it.
With the newspaper, when you put it together, how did you sort of sew the paper?
I used sticky tape and would wrap it around. I would go to my dad's shed and I would get scrap pieces of wood and I would actually make mannequins. And then I would build the mannequins to, it was a trunk of wood. And then I would try and take the dresses off and put it on a real body and realize that it couldn't fit. So there was a lot of experimentation and learning and understanding shapes. But yeah, I would also get scrap fabric from my grandmother, who taught me to sew initially, and she would give me a needle and thread and I would just sew. And I used to dream up of all these costumes and things that I wanted to make for my friends, and they were my first models.
Can you describe the journey from when you were 3 to when you completed year 12, by which time you had handmade 64 garments for your first fashion show with the motive of raising money for childhood cancer?
I think it was, around age 12 was when I started making dresses for my friends. And I remember we were looking in a Vogue. It was age 11 actually, I made my first proper dress. We're looking in a Vogue magazine with one of my best friends. She saw a dress and we were talking about how amazing it would be to have that dress. And so I said, well, why don't we try making it? So with the help of my nonna, I made the dress for her. Another friend saw it and they wanted one, and another friend wanted one. And it kind of began to snowball from there. And I was really into art, so my parents very fortunately put me into art classes. So every Saturday I would go to art classes I had a brilliant teacher named Stephanie Blanchard. Eventually I was asked to do one of my best friend's formal dresses. It was a very complex design. It was a bias cut cross-drape dress, which for a beginning sewer, it was probably a bit advanced. And so a lady named Jenny Torelli, who was a friend of my mum's, she agreed to sort of mentor me. And so I would go a couple of times a week. I would leave school early and I would go do pattern making and sewing lessons with her. And then it wasn't until it came to selecting my subjects for year 12. And one of my teachers came to me and she said, Paul, you've been talking about having this fashion parade for years. With this subject, you can potentially do that. And so I had no experience at all. Didn't really know anyone in the industry, didn't know anything about putting on such a big event. My friends who I made all those dresses for all those years ago, they all agreed to model for me, and their parents all banded together, and my neighbours and all my friends banded together to help us put it on. I remember having all the mums around the kitchen table sewing buttons and sewing hems, helping me finish all those dresses, because 64 pieces, I thought, because people were coming to a show, I thought we had to put on such a big event, so I thought it had to go for maybe an hour long. These days our shows go for about 20 minutes max. So you know, you would do maybe a 30 or 40 piece collection, but so 64 piece collection was a very big undertaking. But it was such a wonderful time, and I had so much support and love around me, and I remember that very fondly.
I'm just looking around at all these dresses, but like, how do you not make a single mistake?
There are plenty of mistakes, don't worry. But I think, you know, years of practice, years of pushing ourselves, and I say ourselves because we're a team now that create these dresses, to be better and to learn from things that we've made. And it's all very experimental, and that's what I love about couture sewing, is that it is so experimental and you really can think outside the box. But certainly doing those 64 pieces, each time I did a new dress, I learnt from the last one.
From that point forward, what were the steps that you took to refine your skills to the point of feeling ready to launch Paolo Sebastian to the world?
Well, with that first show, I remember being very nervous and not really thinking that I was prepared for it. And I thought that maybe we would be lucky to have 100 people turn up to our show. But we ended up having 660 people, and we had a line down the block, and we had amazing reviews, and it was such an amazing, wonderful feeling to see all that hard work that everyone had put in to create this showcase really kind of create such a buzz and excitement. And we received a full page review in the newspaper the next day, and from there I started taking wedding dress orders. So I was in year 12 at the time, and I had promised my parents that after that show I would focus on my studies. But because I had taken on these wedding dress orders, I couldn't say no. I was working and even when we were preparing for the show, I was working from until 3 a.m. in the morning, going to bed, getting up at 7 a.m. the next morning, and then catching the bus to school and trying to do my homework in my lunch break, so that then as soon as I got home, I could focus on my sewing and do it all over again.
How difficult was it for you to overcome the doubts several people were putting forward to you about the viability of your dream if you stayed in Adelaide to pursue it?
You know, it was hard because I love Adelaide, and all my family and friends are here. Growing up, a lot of people said, and also, you know, remembering back, there wasn't so much of a fashion industry here when I was starting out. So rightly so, a lot of people said, you know, if you want to pursue a career in fashion, you're going to have to move interstate or overseas. As a young person, that's really hard to hear, to think that if you want to follow this dream, you're going to have to do it removed from your support system. That, I think, was something that I really battled with when I was around 17. I was very fortunate that I had such a great support system around me, and when I was 19, I was very lucky to go to Milan in Italy to study, and I had an amazing time and I learnt a lot there. But what I realised was, as amazing as it wasn't my home, and I thought, I love what I do and I do it because I love it. So whether or not I become a success, or whether or not I stay in my parents' lounge room, working on the floor and sewing there, I would be happier. So I decided that I was going to move back to Adelaide and make it work. And if it worked, it worked. And if it didn't, it didn't. But at least I tried, and I did it my way. And I think it depends on how you define success. For me, success in my job is, I think, being happy with what I'm creating and being able to create the things that I want to create, and I am, and we're able to do it from Adelaide. So I think if you don't try, then you're never going to know. So I'm just glad that I had the support around me of people to kind of help tune out the negative criticism and block that out and really look for the constructive criticism, focus on what it was that I really wanted to do.
Paul, could you describe the importance of the people who encouraged you in following your dream?
I wouldn't be here without them. I think my parents, number one, my brothers, my family, my nonna, all of my neighbours, my friends have really pushed me, particularly in those early years, to keep going and made it okay for me to make mistakes and learn from them and continue to grow. In more recent years, my team, I'm one person, but it really takes a village to create all of these things. And I think getting Paolo Sebastian to where we are today, it's not just my story, it's a lot of people's story, because there are so many people that are involved in this journey. The people involved in Adelaide Fashion Festival, the local media, the clients, the supporters and the fans, anyone that has been involved in us and helped to push us forward. My partner Anna, who every day props me up and pushes me forward.
Obviously, to achieve the level of success you have today, there must have been some fairly major challenges. Could you share some of them with us?
I think for one, starting out in an industry that I had absolutely no idea about, and particularly because I wanted to be involved in couture. So it's, I guess, what's considered a dying art form. It's very different to the bulk of the fashion industry. It's more traditional. There's a lot of techniques that aren't otherwise seen or used. For one, just learning about that process and learning about what goes into creating those kind of garments. Building a team has been the most rewarding, but also the most challenging thing, because I think in those early years, I was working for the first 4 years just myself, doing all the designing, the cutting, the sewing, the pattern making, everything. So I think that's been one of the biggest challenges. Also, being a young person working in this kind of industry, I think a lot of people in the early years didn't take me very seriously. And it's understandable, because I was a 17-year-old kid telling people what I thought they should wear. So it was hard. So people didn't have necessarily that confidence in me. And I think now, thankfully, over years as I've gotten older and gained a bit more experience and grown more of a brand presence, people have that confidence now. And then also the fact that Australia is very removed from the rest of the world. So I had to get used to the idea of traveling. And I remember in 2019, I was in the later half of the year, was in Dubai, then a week later was in China, then came back for 2 days, and then went to Sydney for a week, and then came back and went to Melbourne for a week. And we had been in Paris mid-year and Dubai before that, so it was a year full of travel. And I remember saying at the end of 2019, I hope 2020 doesn't have as much travel involved in it, and it didn't.
Thankfully it did. Yeah. I remember hearing in a podcast, there was this person, I don't know who it was, but they said when you went over to Paris, you can't come your level of fashion couture. Like, they didn't allow you to,
So yeah, so that is, so our brand, we create couture, and then there's haute couture. So that is kind of like a Michelin star, is the best way to describe that. And you have to go through a whole process to get that. And there's only a handful of brands that have that title. So when we got there, it was really quite daunting, because we knew that we couldn't say haute couture, but the person that advised us I think got a little bit confused and said that we couldn't say couture either. So that was a little bit scary when we got there, but then we spoke to someone else in industry and they said, no, this is couture work, you can definitely.
That would have been like...
Yeah. Well, because I think going to Paris the first time, each time that we've gone, it's been really daunting, but particularly going the first time was really scary because I felt almost like an imposter syndrome because, in Australia, we are always presenting our collection and we have always dreamt of going to Paris, but when you actually get that opportunity to go over and your dream is being realized, it can be really scary and really daunting. So those first couple of days, I thought, what am I doing here? Why, I should just go back home. I don't want to embarrass myself. But thankfully, the press and everyone that came to see us was really supportive and loved the collection. I think one of the challenges that I faced as a kid, probably around your age, was the fact that I wanted to do something that was so different. And I had such a big dream that it was, I think, hard for people at times to, one, take me seriously, but also grasp the determination that I had. I was a very determined kid and I knew exactly what I wanted to do and you couldn't tell me otherwise. And I'm still like that. It was also hard at times for my parents, because people would say, you should encourage Paul to do other things, or, he should pick something a little bit easier to do, or when I was starting to pick my subjects when I was in year 12, and I was working, making clothes for people would say, oh, you should just get a normal job, a 9-to-5 job, a safe job. And that's really hard to hear. And so I think it was hard for my parents because they were very supportive of me and they just wanted me to be happy and do what made me happy. I think in those early years, particularly in, year 6, year 7, even year 4, when you are so focused on something and so focused on your future, which, most kids my age were just focused on what they were doing at that time. But I was always talking about, when I grow up, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. For people to really believe it and take it seriously, that was really hard. And I remember just wishing that people would really understand and see how serious I was about it, and that I was actually going to do what I said I was going to set out to do. And people ask me all the time now, are you surprised with where you are? And if I'm being honest, I'm not, because since I was your age, I'd been planning for this. And so there was no plan B, there was always only plan A, and I had to make it work.
How did it feel to win Young Australian of the Year in 2017 following the intense efforts you had put in from the age of 3 to that point in time, and also taking the time to actively inspire other young people to follow their dreams?
I remember first being nominated for South Australian of the Year, and I was very surprised by the nomination because it's not something that I was expecting. I went to that award night and I remember sitting back in my chair because I didn't think that they were going to call out my name. I didn't have a speech prepared or anything, and then they said the Young South Australian of the Year award goes to Paul Vasilev, and I nearly fell off the chair because I wasn't ready for it. Then going over to Canberra, I again was just so grateful to be in a room with such incredible people. I never in my wildest dreams imagined that it would be me that was chosen. And I still struggle with it because I think what I was doing at that time was just something that felt so natural. I was going to schools and talking with young people about following their dreams, trying to do what I could to, support the community and create an awareness of fashion in Adelaide and in Australia. So being in Canberra, I kind of felt that I hadn't really done anything that was that special because I was just doing what came natural. And even now, it doesn't feel real. It feels very surreal that I was able to experience that and be recognised for what we were doing with Paolo Sebastian. I remember the Prime Minister calling out my name, and he said Paul, and then he paused for a little bit, and in that split second where he paused to say Vasilev, I remember looking around and thinking, were there any other Pauls in the room, or did he say the right name? And I had to get up and give a speech. And that time, thankfully, I prepared a speech just in case. I didn't think I was going to use it. It was and has been the most incredible experience of my life. I think been the thing that has connected me with young people and being able to share my story with them, because ultimately, I think as a young person, I didn't really have, I guess, a role model or someone to say that it's okay, that you can follow this career path, this dream, no matter what industry it's in. I hope that I can be that for someone. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I get, and going to schools, going to the TAFE, sharing my story and my experiences with young people to hopefully encourage them to follow their dreams. And it's been amazing because we recently had Vogue Festival, and I had a lot of students that I spoke to come up to me. I did a talk with them years ago, and they've come up to me and they've said, oh, we've decided to follow a career in fashion because we heard you talk at St. Michael's. It's just the greatest feeling to think that you helped inspire someone. I was very grateful for the opportunity to speak with the classes, because I remember very clearly what it was like to be sitting in those seats. And I tried to just give them the advice that I thought I would want to hear at that age. And it was just about holding on and keeping to what you're passionate about. And even if you do have people saying that you can't do something, if you really believe in it and it's your true passion, you go for it.
In my research, you have lived a life filled with love, adoration, care, unflinching dedication to perfection, and incredible resolve. These are the building blocks for young people to give them even a reasonable chance to follow their dreams. Wouldn't it be fantastic for every child to be touched by some of what you have experienced?
Yeah, I feel very lucky and blessed to have experienced even, a quarter of what I've been able to. I feel like I've had at 31 a very full life. I've got to tick off almost all of my dreams that I remember when I was 9 years old, I wrote down a list of things that I wanted to do in my life. One was make a dress for Jennifer Lopez. I haven't done that yet. Start my own brand and work with Disney. When I was 27, the same year that I won Australian of the Year, that year I got to collaborate with Disney, and that for me was a lifelong dream. I never imagined that it would actually happen, but I used to watch, growing up, lots of Disney films like most kids, and was very inspired by the characters. And such a special show because it was the combination of everything across my life that was important to me put into one collection. Working on that show, I didn't want it to end. It was the most amazing experience. And I got to go over to Disneyland, got 2 days in Disneyland, and I got a private tour of Walt's office. It was a dream come true, because I used to, when I was your age, I used to watch the making of all of the Disney films. And I would even, because I wanted to be an animator. Before fashion design, I wanted to be an animator. So I used to watch Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Aladdin, all of them. I'd watch it on pause and I would watch frame by frame because I was just so fascinated by all the work that went into creating these amazing films. And the music, the messaging, the stories, the characters, being there and being in the heart of it and the place where all these amazing things were created, was a very surreal, wonderful experience.
Can you share your views on this statement to clarify for young people to really follow their dreams, and how would the world be, Paul, if that was achieved?
Well, I think it's important to make sure you're doing things for the right reason and do it because it's a true passion and it's what you really want to do. I think getting into things because you want notoriety or fame or money, I think, it's fine if that's your reasoning, but I don't think that there may be a strong enough reason to want to really push forward with a dream, because you have to be very dedicated and it's a lot of discipline and hard work and dedication to realize a dream. You know, nothing is handed to you and nothing comes easy. I think it would be amazing for all young people to be given the opportunity to follow their dreams and their passions. And who knows where the world would end up, but I think it would be a much better place if every child was fortunate enough to be given that opportunity.